Okay, let's start at the beginning. I've received many questions about this whole project and how I've managed to pull it off. So I decided to lay out all the parts I have and that I've made over the years and explain to you how I got it done. This is my first race car that I won a race with. It's a Kyosho MP5, which I modified into an MP6, and I won the Nordic Championships with it in 2002. And I remember that race because there was a guy from Sweden who came over with a new 7.5, and he realized I was racing an MP5, and when I won, I think he got a bit mad. But that was the first race I ever won. I never even won a club race, nothing. The first race I won was the Nordic Championship, so I'll never forget that. So the first part that I ever made, I don't remember when this was. This was a part for a touring car. Stiffer upper deck. It must have been something like maybe 2003 that I made that. So that's the beginning of my manufacturing days, I guess. And moving on, we have the first actual parts that I made which improved the performance of the car and which I used in racing. So this is a battery box I used in my Hobao Hyper 8 and a receiver box which I placed on top of the servo. So I had a separate receiver and battery box, and I used these during 2006 and 2007. Moving on to the next stage, I had started to make my own parts for my Hobao, and I realized that I couldn't go much further. I had designed a different radio tray layout, but it didn't really fit on the car that well, and I also realized that I had many more ideas that I could do, but it really needed to be on a different car. The Hobao was good. I had made some changes to it, but to be able to use all my ideas, I needed to make a completely new car. After testing many things of my Hobao, I decided I'd try and design my own car, and these parts are basically many of the first parts that I ever prototyped. For example, C-hubs, gearboxes, side guards, suspension arms, everything's basically there. And they were all made in Finland by one of my friends. And the results of all of this work, which happened mainly during the 2006 summer and autumn when I broke my arm. I couldn't do much of anything else, so I just stayed at home and designed my car. And the result was this. This car I then took with me to the Nuremberg Toy Fair. It looked much better then. I had an engine in it, fuel tank, all the linkages, shocks, everything, so it was a finished product. And I had it with me in February 2007 at the Nuremberg Toy Fair. And I was hoping that I could get someone to produce it. When I started designing it, I was hoping that this would be the new Hobao. But I learned at that time that they were working with OFNA on the Hyper 9. So I forgot about that. I also had this car with me when I visited Himoto in Hong Kong. That was in 2008. And actually, a funny story about it, Colin Wong from Himoto, he stepped on it and broke it in half. So it's broken now, but I hope I can glue it back together and put an engine in it and make it look good again, because it's a piece of history. For 2008, I worked with Himoto, and I did a lot of prototyping. I made these parts in Finland. I made different C-hubs and rear hubs, radio tray, some steering parts to test different Ackerman settings, and my friend even managed to make some aluminium steering knuckles, so I could use my own steering knuckles. Himoto also produced some parts for me, like the engine mounts and some other aluminium parts. So they already looked production at that stage. And then I have my own differential. I had the picture on the internet of it, and people kept asking, like, how could you make it so small when I can reveal that it's not round? That's why it's so small. It's a slightly different system to how the differential works, but now I've put it on hold, and one day I hope to get it produced. But for now I'm just focusing on the standard car and the standard differentials. So for the whole of 2008, I was basically just testing all the different cars on the market, and also I made a lot of parts for my car to test. Continuing on during 2008 year, I got my first actual prototype chassis and prototype car to drive, and I drove it for the first time in Greece. I'll never forget that. I was there with Jess Saunders from England, and we ran the car and we had a video camera and we taped the whole thing, and then I believe I forgot it, or Jess forgot it. I can blame it on him, although I believe it was my fault. We forgot it. Let's say we forgot it on the roof of our rental car, I believe, and someone stole it, so we lost the footage. So that sucked. But this is the car I tested all my ideas on during the 2008 year, and also a lot during 2009. With Himoto, we also produced some option parts. I was racing the Hobao at the time, so we made some arm holders, and we made some shock towers for the Hobao car. And this is the car that I raced for the last time at the European Championships in Greece, 2008, and I hoped that that would be the last time I raced another manufacturer's car, that after that I could race my own, but obviously that wasn't the case. And mainly during the 2009 season, already after I'd stopped working with Himoto, I came back to Finland and I tried a lot of new ideas again. I have some X-ray arms and hubs that I tried on my car to test the X-ray front end. I had Hobao Hyper 7 arms I've tried. I again had new gearboxes to try. Here's just an old front end that I used to try. I used my shock tower that I made for the Hobao. And different chassis again I've tried. I've had so many chassis that I've lost count. Here we have a mix of old and new parts. Basically, this is proof to me that my prototyping guy is the best, because I've got so many parts left over because they just didn't break. We thought that these are basically, all of these parts are made directly from a 3D CAD file. So I draw the part in 3D, I send it over to my friend and he prints it out. It's like a 3D printer, so this is what you get from the machine. And we assumed that they would be fragile, and during the beginning of the process, like 2007 when I got parts, they were. I wasn't able to drive with them, but 2008, 2009, all the parts I got sent were so strong that I could even crash and they wouldn't break. So I was left with a lot of parts. So if we look over here, I have many different arms, different length arms, and also on the front arms I tried having the hub in different locations. And we have a number of rear hubs, gearboxes, C-hubs. We have the fuel tank. We have steering knuckles, air filters, arm holders. I had a bunch of different arm holders. These I actually made in aluminium. They weren't strong enough to run. Center diff, mount tops. One of the reasons I had so many gearboxes was that in the beginning I didn't have my own diff, so I had to make a bigger gearbox so I could use, for example, a modified X-ray diff or a Hobao diff or something like that. So then later on, when I got my own diff, then I could use my own smaller gearbox. And what else do we have? Yeah, we have different Ackerman plates, high and low arm holders, wide and narrow arm holders. This is a prototype gear made by hand in Finland for the rear diff. We have a prototype shock tower left over. Some fuel tank posts, just some parts to try different suspension geometry. And basically, one of the very few prototype parts that actually broke was a rear gearbox. I let Miguel Matias try my car in Portugal and obviously had to crash and break it in half, so never let someone else try a prototype. Now, actually I did many times, but it's good to have friends. I have a friend who likes to make stuff out of clay, and he's very good at shaping body shells, and he's done a couple of very realistic body shells like a Volkswagen Beetle, and I asked him if he was interested to help me make my body, and he was. So what we did was we basically started with a big lump of clay, and I sat next to him, you know, trying to explain what I wanted and where I wanted the roof line to be, and the front end design, how I wanted it to go, and he had his own ideas also, and this is what we ended up with. Basically, first we had a clay model, and based on that we made a silicon mold. This is soft silicon, and so we put the clay mold in a box, we poured the silicon over it, we let it harden, then we turned it around, took the clay out, and we were left with this mold. Then we molded some really hard plaster in it. This was molded in there, and then I found a company in Finland who were able to just from this make a prototype body. So the way it's done is a sheet of Lexan is held and heated over the body, and then it's sucked onto it. And when I had the Lexan body, then I sent it over to the manufacturer, and they scanned it into the computer. It's pretty amazing. They just scan the body, and they get a 3D file from it, and then they can machine an aluminium mold. And with that, this is then produced from the actual aluminium mold. Originally, the car was finished in early 2007, but since then I've kept redesigning it, and I've had some new ideas. I've made some parts smaller and lighter, and here I have two examples. This is the very first chassis I designed, and this is now the latest pre-production chassis, so it's a lot more narrow. And also I've changed the engine mount design and a lot of other things. And also the center diff mount. This was the very first center diff mount I did. This was back in 2006, and I'd never actually seen a lay-down brake system before. And this is what I came up with, so I was quite proud of this design. And after that we've seen many lay-down brake designs, but not the same as this. But as you can see, this is now the latest design, and it's a lot smaller, maybe a third smaller and lighter. So those are just two of the things that have happened during the last 2 years. So the wing. This was the biggest pain in the behind ever. I must have had like 10 different wings, but I couldn't find any of them. I don't know, maybe I was just mad and threw them all away. This is the only one I found. Some kind of downforce wing thing that broke. And I had many different designs, and I was never really happy until I then came up with this. And basically it just started from this shape. I saw this on a real racing car, and then I just started thinking about it, and I fired up my CAD program and started drawing stuff, and this happened by mistake, and yeah, then it just happened, and then I was happy with it. So this was actually the very last part that I finished for production. Pretty much all of these things that I've explained, except for the wing and the body shell, happened during 2008 and 2009. And 2009 I worked with another company, but nothing came of that, so I decided I needed to do this myself. I mean, I had put so much work and time and effort and money into this project that I really needed to make it happen. I mean, I wasn't going to give up, so I decided I'd start my own company. And I did. I found a manufacturer. I did all the research. You can check the website, and if you read the story, part 1 and part 2, then you'll see what I've been up to. But during this year, basically starting in December of 2009, we started producing the car. And this is the result. At this time, this is the actual car I raced at the European Championships. And it's very close to what the actual production car will be like. So the last piece of the puzzle and the last step in this long process is the actual production kit. And as you can see, it's not here yet. Hopefully we can get it done soon, and we set the release date at the 1st of December.